Sometimes a road trip with a friend just doesn't turn out quite the way you wanted. Maybe you end up somewhere you never expected to be, stranded in an unfamiliar place where things aren't quite as they seem. Maybe the locals are less than friendly. But even in the darkest, most hopeless moments, a friendly phone call can make all the difference.
We're all fucking dead.
These are just a few of the things I learned during my first hour with adinfernum, and by the time credits rolled on this road trip to the mouth of hell, I had discovered a whole lot more. Let's check it out. My name is Boss Sauce.
And I'm Rollin' Coons. And together, we are the Two-Headed Hero!
Adinfernum is the latest title from indie developer Glass Knuckle Games. This is a game I've been following for quite a while, not just because the idea seems like it was tailored specifically for my tastes, but also due to the really interesting YouTube channel run by the lead developer, Entropy Phi. This guy uses his programming background to tweak and boundary break popular indie games, especially a lot of New Blood and David Szymanski stuff. It's worth a watch. I'll leave a link in the comments, but in the meantime, we need to get back to the main event. Put in the most basic terms, adinfernum is an immersive sim viewed through the lens of survival horror. Now on the surface, this might seem like nothing new. ImSims and horror themes have been in bed together for decades, and almost every box stacking, vent cracking, keypad hacking entry into the immersive sim category shares at least a few elements with the likes of Resident Evil and company. Ammo starvation, battery sucking flashlights, tightly crafted puzzle box level design. These tropes all tend to get passed around like the last bottles at the after party. However, we've only recently started to see horror games drag immersive sim elements further into their designs. The best and most notable example of this has to be last year's Amnesia: The Bunker, which blurred the line so heavily between the tension of a Resi-style title and the try-anything player-driven approach of a box stacker that many reviewers jumped up to proclaim it the first survival horror immersive sim. And hey, maybe that's not far off, but it feels a little unfair to adinfernum considering both games were being developed at about the same time, and Frictional Games probably has a much bigger pile of resources to draw on due to all that sweet, sweet amnesia cash. Adinfernum opens with a couple of college buddies having a road trip that suddenly goes sideways when a violent sandstorm crashes your ride. After somehow surviving the crash without a single injury, you awaken to find yourself in the parking lot of a mysterious desert convenience store, with the sound of a panicked voice crackling over an old radio at your feet. As you make your way around the abandoned Shell station, more like Hell Station, you might notice that the controls feel really good, like solid first-person shooter good. Our college boy was probably some kind of track star because he's got some moves. There's the ImSim staples of running, jumping, ducking, and peeking around the corners, but we also have some nice little touches like being able to vault, climb up ledges, slide into a crouch, or crack open a door to peek through. This all comes in handy when hiding from the giant immortal meat cleaver ghouls that live in this gas station. A lot of attention was put into sneaking around, and it shows. Adinfernum is a dark game, and it's harder for enemies to spot our unfortunate undergrad when he's in the shadows. The same is true for the ghouls though. These guys blend in pretty well with the vacant parking lots and retail shop until the lights are turned back on. Sometimes you'll only be able to catch a silhouette lurking in front of the shop's dim fluorescent lamps as you sit there, curled up and shaking in your newly piss-dampened boots for them to pass on by. You'll learn to make a habit of listening for their groans and squishy footsteps, and when they're close enough to you to breathe the same air, you're going to hear the cloud of flies that buzzes around them. Sick, but awesome, an absolute hell on the nerves. So let's talk about the nerve system for a second. When the nerve meter hits critical, all sorts of random effects begin to swim into your field of view. This can be subtle, like the color of the flashlight beam changing from white to blood red, or static coming in over the radio, but it gets progressively more intense the farther the meter drops. Let nerve fall to an unsafe level and suddenly your aim shakes. The UI starts screaming, your vision starts looking like a printer test sheet, and your radio buddy begins to say some pretty fucked up stuff. The first time adinfernum directly shouted my screen name into my face, I squealed with glee like a little schoolgirl. What's even more impressive is that all these effects are unscripted, relying on a complex dynamic system that's proudly touted on the game's Steam page. I'll admit, not all of the spooky jabs the game throws at you were winners. The ones where they just plop a monster JPEG in front of your eyes were like, okay. But I also want to point out that I experienced new hallucinations at different points during each one of my 4 playthroughs, and there's probably still a bunch out there that I haven't even seen. With nerve drip draining away every second the ghouls are in sight, waiting to act is not always wise. Even so, we have some options. A big advantage of being stuck in a derelict filling station is the amount of trash just laying around everywhere. So make it work for you. Take out a light bulb, throw something down that hallway and solid snake your scrawny ass out of there. It's garbage can, not garbage cannot. Sometimes a monster will still catch a scent of fresh meat or simply spot your toes peeking out from behind a barrel. Get cornered and it's going to end in a fight. Combat is a bit basic. Melee weapons have a block and a bonk bonk button. Ranged weapons have an aim and a bang bang button. The enemies are lethal, and some can't be killed, only temporarily slowed down. But on the upside, there's a pretty decent range of weapons to choose from, and each one can be upgraded by combining them with a special kit in true Resident Evil style. But let's get real. There's only one weapon that you absolutely need. Good old reliable nail bat. Other stuff can be combined too. Combine salt and crackers to get salty crackers, which taste a little better. Combine salt and mints to make salty mints, which taste a lot worse. Crafting goes deeper than just basic item combinations though. These weird altars in the safe rooms allow you to break down items into their material components and reconstitute them as other useful things, like ammo and health. There's one minor annoyance: no way to unload ammunition from a weapon, which can result in some wasted rounds. Even so, this is a versatile take on survival horror resource management, and together these crafting and upgrade systems allow players the freedom to develop their own playstyle. Bat style. I wouldn't say adinfernum is overly difficult, but chances are you're going to get chewed to bits a few times until you come to terms with the rules of this infernal world. Different levels of challenge can be selected from the start, and each one changes how many enemies and resources appear throughout the game, as well as altering some of the puzzle solutions. The game also includes a simple dynamic difficulty. Every time your unlucky undergrad meets his demise, you'll get a substantial damage buff while reducing your final score, ensuring that you'll probably be able to brute force your way through the game no matter how many times the monsters rip out your eyeballs. This might seem like a pretty simple lever to pull, but it goes a long way towards providing replay value, and that's good, because in order to get the most out of the story and the setting, you'll want to return to this forbidden filling station several times. The world of adinfernum might be compact, but it's densely packed with items and secrets. You never know what treasures might be found during a dumpster diving adventure, or what hidden paths might lie just beyond the odd crate or barrel. And here we see that tightly crafted puzzle box level design I mentioned earlier. Sections of adinfernum open up and loop back on each other as you progress, and it's really satisfying to find these shortcuts that lead back to old familiar areas. Like its kindred spirit, Amnesia the Bunker, here you'll spend a lot of time evaluating the most efficient or safest routes in order to snatch up that next piece of the puzzle and loop back to a safe room. Adinfernum takes this concept of running loops through its environments a step further during certain points in the plotline, which I'm absolutely biting my tongue about because it's awesome. This really should be experienced firsthand if you have even the most minor interest in playing this yourself. I'm not going to spoil anything, let's just say that adinfernum does a lot with a small location, and these developments are deeply entwined in the occult storyline. Since the game is brand new, we won't be laying out a full story analysis in this video. A lot of the plot twists and turns should really be experienced by the player, but I want to talk about a little bit of the story and setting, so just be warned that a couple minor spoilers lie ahead. If you want to go into adinfernum completely blind, skip ahead to here. After we punch that new game button on the title screen, our faceless main character wakes up in the back of a sedan, surrounded by old baseball cards, ancient city maps, and other bits of occult garbage. The driver is constantly chattering away about some inane college nonsense, establishing that he's your classmate. And what do you know, it's Johnny Matragrano behind the mic here. At this exponential rate, all games by 2030 will have a Johnny Matragrano cameo. It's just basic math.
Damn, this storm is really picking up. I can barely see 5 feet ahead of us.
But a sudden storm whips up in the middle of the desert highway. Johnny's monologue is cut short by a surprise cinder block to the face, and the car spins out of control over a swell of synthwave. Having survived the concussion, we awaken to a voice crackling in our ear through a hand radio and see that we're trapped outside a neglected gas station in front of an inviting neon sign. This begins one of the most intuitive tutorials I've ever seen in an indie game. Find a hammerhead in one trash bin and a handle in the next, stick them together to make your first melee weapon. Break the glass to escape the cage, chuck a brick through the window to open the door, and crawl over to the game's first safe room. Our radio buddy squawks at us to turn on the lights, and through these brief one-sided conversations we find out that her name is Audrey Foster, and she's trapped somewhere else in the gas station. Wait a second, didn't your brick-faced buddy in the car mention a girl named Audrey on the ride out here?
You know Audrey, that girl from foreign policy class? She's actually gonna be there too.
That's a weird coincidence. Anyway, we make our way through decaying store shelves and rusty canned goods to flip the breaker, only to come face to rotting face with the very first of these undead guardians, and your very first nerve-driven hallucinations. From here, Adinfernum opens up its fiery gates and lets you freely slip around the truck stop to unearth its hellish secrets as you see fit. Audrey nudges you in the right direction by telling you stories from a spooky book that she finds nearby after the lights turn on.
It looks like they were trying to perform a ritual that would resurrect the dead and bring about a union with God.
Please don't open the creepy book.
She guesses that the sandstorm trapping the both of you here originates from whatever spooky cult dealings were taking place, and completing the work of the cultists might clear the storm so that you can escape. There's no other bright ideas kicking around, and there's already meat cleaver zombies and an impassable fog outside, so guess we got no choice but to roll with it. The first recipe in the cult cookbook is a potion made from equal parts ancient yellow bathroom cleaner and blue tool shop juice that supposedly allows one to see beyond the veil of reality.
Sounds like bullshit to me.
Yeah, it does, but once you chug the mystery shot, stuff outside changes, and not for the better. Seems that there's more to this cult than you first suspected, and the only way out of this madness is to follow their footsteps through to the bitter end. As you carefully pad your way through this pit stop, you'll notice that Adinfernum clearly doesn't have the budget of a heavy-hitting horror game, but the art direction and the audio here work really well to weave a dark, foreboding atmosphere. This extends to the soundtrack, which is short, but incredibly sweet. Music is used sparingly throughout the game's runtime, but what's there hits hard. Emotive synthwave tracks and ambient horror stings are there to catch you after the pulse-jumping intro theme fades out in your ears. Voice acting is equally excellent and manages to reel itself back from exposition dumping too much. Audrey is a pretty convincing sidekick, and the times where she's whispering or crying into the radio from fear feel fairly genuine, pulling on some of that Blair Witch found footage type of vibe.
We're all fucking dead.
I'm glad that Adinfernum isn't just another entry into the crowded field of PS1 style horror and instead does its own low-poly, Carpenter-esque kind of thing. This ain't no Brown Dungeon. It has a heavy use of color and shadow that brings to mind 80s horror films and giallo movies. I'd love to know what influenced the artist. Weapons and items all look grungy and run down. The fluorescent lights cast a sickly tone on the neglected walls. Enemy models, simple as they might be, have unnerving thousand-yard stares, unblinking even as a bash from the mighty bat sends them staggering. Some of the animation seems a little stiff, but I feel like this leans into the surreal nature of the game more often than not. Few things could break me out of the experience once I was sucked in, but there were still a couple of minor nitpicks. The enemy variety is pretty small. Although I like the ones that are in there, one or two more might have provided some additional challenge in the late game. The frame rate took a hit when there were more than 5 or 6 demons sniffing around, but encounters with more than a couple monsters are pretty rare. I also ran into the occasional bug. Most of these were minor. An inventory bug granted me 40 salt shakers for some reason, and one of the enemies managed to teleport me through a wall, though thankfully it didn't softlock my progress. However, I ran into a bug that deleted my in-game achievement progress after finishing my 3rd run, which is a little disappointing. The game is short. My first playthrough took me just under 2.5 hours, but with the promise of multiple endings and challenges to achieve dangling just out of reach of your sweaty little hands, it begs to be replayed. Adinfernum feels like someone crept into my most cherished gaming memories and set out to make something specifically for me. It combines what I love most from 2 of my favorite genres, the survival horror game and the immersive sim, and puts them into a smartly crafted experience for less than the price of a movie ticket. So do yourself a favor. Turn the headphones up, turn the lights out, and open that dusty glass door into the cursed realm of Adinfernum. If you've gotten this far, thanks for sticking around, just like the proverbial nails in the old bat. And if you want to leave a couple coins in our donation box, consider joining these fine champions at our Hall of Heroes over on the Patreon page. It starts at the modest price of just 2 doubloons per month to get early access to our videos. Or tip us over on Ko-Fi. Maybe your wallet's feeling light, and that's okay. If you like, share, and comment, that also helps our small but mighty channel grow just a little bit bigger. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next Two-Headed Hero. Now it's time to gas up and get on out of here.